Hello, everyone. Today I am going to be reviewing the eighth studio album by Americana songwriter extraordinaire Lana Del Rey. This album is titled Blue Banisters, and it comes just a little over 6 months after her last album, Chemtrails Over the Country Club, back in March. She pulled a Taylor Swift and decided to give us 2 albums in 1 year. And instead of what she did with the Paradise Edition being sort of an attaché to Born to Die, this is an entirely different project that she is giving us in such a short time frame from her last project. I definitely have seen a few reviewers comment on the fact that other musicians might have decided to do a deluxe edition sort of treatment for Chemtrails with a lot of these songs instead of put out an entirely new project. But Lana definitely is much more about albums as cohesive bodies of work without really worrying too much about the commerciality about it. So she wanted it to be its own thing, which I respect. She is devoted to putting out albums in an age where singles are becoming an EPs and projects. That's the new term for an album that's not an EP, but also not an album. It's called a project. But it's not also a mixtape, and it's being sold as an album. I'm very confused by that label, but that being said, borders are always going to start getting blurred a little bit when it comes to a lot of things in this day and age, and that's just the way that music industry is trending. When she announced that we were getting another album so soon after Chemtrails, I was a little weary. I'm going to be honest with you. I think that Lana, she's put out 8 albums in 10 years, pretty much at this point. That's a lot. You know, she's been very prolific. And I respect her for that. But I also think, and again, I do think this review needs to be taken with a tiny pinch of salt because I'm not entirely sure I could consider myself a Lana Del Rey stan. I love Lana Del Rey a lot more than I do a lot of other artists. So it's not like I'm just a casual fan of hers. I've listened to everything she's ever put out, at least commercially. There's a lot of unreleased stuff, which I'll get into in this review, because apparently this album is full of songs that had forms years ago on other projects that never came to fruition. I never fully listened to all of her unreleased stuff, but whenever she was putting something out commercially, I was always right in line to listen. But I'm getting a little bit weary of the same formula that she's using sonically. I'm going to be honest with you. The sound of hers is starting to plateau just a little bit. The albums that she started coming out with, from Born to Die to Ultraviolence to Honeymoon to Lust for Life to Norman, were very much Lana Del Rey and her aesthetic, but they were very unique in sound, and they utilized her sound in a way that made them stand out in a different sort of genre that she was flirting with. Even Chemtrails could be argued to be a standalone kind of different sound from anything she's done before, despite also having the sensibility and songwriting and somewhat vocal delivery that she's very well known for, which is a bit sleepy, sometimes a bit flat, sometimes very dry, other times very warm, sometimes very, very beautiful, and oftentimes altogether a very wonderful, mellifluous package. But it's not for everyone. But on Blue Banisters, I think she's starting to hit that wall sonically, where I'm not entirely sure there's much more in that direction that she can do that is going to sonically satisfy me. I feel as though Blue Banisters is sort of her throwing a lot of stuff at the wall and just seeing what sticks project. Now, that's not to say that I don't think she wasn't inspired for this project. I think that this possibly could be the most raw and personal album she has put out. And that's a big statement because we've been saying that about a lot of her albums to date. But this album is extremely autobiographical for her. She's no longer, so much caught up in the archetype of fame and beauty and the mistress identity that she loves to play around with in her songwriting. She's much more closer to home, singing about her sister, her family, her mother, her father, experiences she's had during this pandemic, experiences and clashes she's had with the media and critics. She's really kind of just wanting to abide in her own diary of poetry. And I really applaud her for that. I think that's a trajectory we've slowly seen her in the last 10 years head towards. These songs are poetry more so than they are songs, a lot of the case. And I said this about Chemtrails. I said this about Norman. She's really going into not just the singer-songwriter trope of really putting lyrics first, but also really emphasizing that time signatures and, you know, having a specific hook structure in pop music. None of this matters anymore. You've got songs like Textbook, the opener, that have so many different songs within one song. And yes, I do think sometimes the deviation from a traditional time signature and pattern, the key changes, the somewhat discordant harmonies that she has applied with some of the instrumentals, it can get a little bit difficult to swallow. This is definitely an album that takes repeated listens, and I'm trying over repeated listens to really sink my teeth into it more, because upon first listen, I wasn't vibing with a lot of the songs the way I wished I could. There were certain melodies that were jumping out, and a lot of them that were just flatlining. But obviously, I'm here to dissect the lyrics, which are so much more the focus. Again, instrumentally, we have piano, we have some synth keyboard stuff, we've got some guitar, we've got light cymbals, we've got some light percussion coming in. And then we occasionally have a, you know, hip-hop beat thrown in on that one interlude, which I'll talk about. Very puzzling interlude indeed. So this is definitely not an album of hooks. This is not an album of beats. It's definitely very ambient. When she dropped the first 3 singles, which were sort of all dropped together at once from this project back in June, I never reviewed them on this channel. And that was a choice I made because Chemtrails had come out so recently, and we assumed the album was coming, that was coming soon, which at first was going to be called Rock Candy Sweet, and now is called Blue Banisters. I'm very much a fan of Blue Banisters as a title, not so much Rock Candy Sweet. That title does not really make any sense, and it's not very romantic sounding. It's just not interesting to me. I don't want her to go and run with that title. I really hope we never see an album of hers with that title, because I am going to critique the hell out of that title. I'm going to have a real issue with it. But that being said, because she has brilliant titles for her records, I decided I'll wait until this album comes out to fully talk about any of these songs. So for anyone who wanted to know my thoughts on Blue Banisters, Textbook, or Wildflower, Wildfire, you'll finally get those thoughts. But finally, the album did eventually materialize. It didn't come over the summer. It's now in the autumn. We've got 15 tracks, a much bigger project than Chemtrails, which was a bit short. So like I said, this does feel more like these 2 albums could be kind of blended together, just like Paradise and Born to Die were, but apparently she wants them to be separate little babies. The album art, I think, is interesting in that it's very Lana. It's very that classic sort of elegant, but also a little sensual, a little risque. With the dogs, it's kind of Girl Next Door, but with a regality to it. Very reminiscent of, you know, her with the tigers in the Born to Die music video. I think it fits the overall aesthetic. We have some banisters behind her from the deck that she is on, with that little reference there. The banister idea as a metaphor, I think, is really fascinating, and I'm really excited to talk about that song. But first, let's talk about Textbook. Talk about a song that has really grown on me, that I didn't really listen too much to after it came out in the summer, but now have been revisiting in the context of the whole record. Also, can we just say that that single cover idea she had, where she used the same photo photoshopped 3 different times, I think was actually brilliant. I'm not going to fault her for that or being lazy. I think she was just having a good time and decided, you know what? Why not just kind of troll everyone a little bit, since they're having so much fun, you know, saying things about me, about what I say and how I say things. Now, this is not to absolve Lana of any criticism. Lana has come into some controversy over the years, and I've shared my thoughts on that on previous reviews, particularly with her Chemtrails project. So if you want to know any of my thoughts on some of that stuff in the last couple years, watch those videos, because I really go into it. And trust me, I am not defending her all the way here. I don't know. Lana seems to be the type who dubiously kind of wanders into things and then retreats. And it just kind of is like, okay, are we going to talk about that anymore? Or are we just going to forget it and sweep it under the rug? Seems like that might be the case here. The general public seems to have moved on. Nicki Minaj has seemed to become the controversial woman of the hour now. So Lana's like, phew, people aren't coming down my neck anymore. Let's have Nicki take all the heat. And let's be honest, what Nicki is doing right now, I think, is even more problematic. So that's a separate video. Maybe one day I'll talk about that. But Lana is definitely no longer quite the controversial woman du jour. There was a critic who accused Lana of being a textbook white fragility problematic white woman. And I have a feeling, as a lot of fans suspect, that the title and a lot of the gist of the lyrical content of this song is revolving around that idea. I guess you could call it textbook. I was looking for the father I wanted back, and I thought I found it in Brentwood. It seemed only appropriate you'd easily have my back. And then there was the issue of her. I didn't even like myself or the love the life I had. And there you were with shining stars, standing blue with open arms. You touched the detriment most of the friends I knew already had. You've got a Thunderbird, my daddy had one too. Let's rewrite history, I'll do this dance with you. You know I'm not that girl, you know I'll never be. Maybe just the way we're different could set us free. The chorus. There we were, screaming Black Lives Matter in the crown by the Old Man River. And I saw you saw who I am. God, I wish I was with my father. He could see us in all our splendor. All the things I couldn't want for him, I screamed for them. The Black Lives Matter shout out is one of those lyrical mic drop little things that I think takes a lot of the attention, as it's a very loaded statement, especially for someone like Lana Del Rey, who has already kind of mixed herself in with some ire with the Black community over certain things she said. So it comes across a little pandering, but I don't doubt that it autobiographically isn't true. She showed photos of her attending a Black Lives Matter protest last year. She's for the cause, supposedly. But the fact that she included it in the lyrics in a song that isn't at all about race, I think is a pointed sort of, oh, by the way, just don't forget, I was there. You must not forget, I'm not this problematic white woman that you think I am, okay? I'm out there on the streets with, fighting the good fight, just like you all are, which doesn't absolve her of things as I think she might want it to. But at the same time, it might be a gesture that is still met warmly. I don't know. It's not a gesture for me to judge. That would be for a person of color to, for a Black person to critique. But for me, it comes across a little pandering. That's just the way I feel about it. Lana has been through a couple relationships, particularly most notably a relationship that went south with a Republican, very outed sort of conservative guy. And this is definitely, I think, referenced in the lyrics here, comparing romances that she's dealing with her love for her father, who's become this mythical figure in her songs as early as her first record. It starts to blur the lines of what is autobiographical and what is just a fictitious archetype. But that's something we've come to expect with Lana's music. Everything can be a metaphor for something else. Blue Banisters, the second song, I think sonically is actually quite brilliant. Now, you might think, oh, Arthur, it doesn't really have a very strong melody. Why are you, such a fan? I think the interesting thing is that, the hurried sort of falling over your feet sort of way of getting a whole lot of context and subtext into the verses of this song. Lyrically and poetically, she packs a punch in the verses. But when she stretches it out for the chorus, she pauses, she hits that stop sign, and she meditates on these simple phrases. The way she drags out happy, and then the fact that she realizes maybe she's not going to be happy from doing the things that she's often done to escape sadness, like filling pages full of Russian poetry. And that really scared her. And she meditates on that for quite a minute. It really stretches out the bar. And I really appreciate those chords just reverberating in the air. I think it really adds an elevated element to the song. She uses the banister metaphor in what I can only interpret as a way of support. Banisters support you on a structure, an elevated structure from falling off. And in this way, she's singing about how she uses her sisters and her friends mostly for the support she needs when her life is falling apart. Every spring, it sounds like they all come together to paint their banisters blue, which could mean, blue is a melancholic color, that they all sort of take this moment to confide in each other what they've been going through. And they use each other as a sounding board or a way to express all of the pain that they've been going through. And in some ways, that is painting their banisters blue, but it's a comfortable thing to do. It's a process of healing that they need to go through each year. Because there's a man that's in my past. There's a man that's still right here. He's real enough to touch. In the darkest nights, he's shining. So there's men that come and go out of her life that will come and continue to be there. And she's going to need their support going through all of these different breakups. And in the end, she sings about their painting banisters green, which I would suppose is more of a positive color. green and gray, which I think are interesting colors that I could suppose could symbolize something organic, but also something kind of a little bit ephemeral. Like in the music video, there's this ephemeral haze. There's this like filter of, you know, some sort of paradise lost kind of feel to it. And so summer comes, winter goes. You know, maybe gray is the winter, green is the summer. Spring I skip, God knows. That's a very interesting line. I think spring is definitely worth not skipping. I would skip winter, just my opinion. Spring I sleep, heaven knows. Every time it turns to May, all my sisters fly to me to paint. I think, again, it's just a really beautifully constructed metaphor. Very poetic, very elegant, and very deeply personal. And the way that, like I said, she leaves certain lines to just sit in the air and resonate with you, I think is beautifully haunting. One of my favorite songs on the record, for sure. Arcadia. Now, when Arcadia was released, I thought she was going to be singing about Arcadia as this sort of archetypal location. You know, Arcadia is a synonym for heaven in a lot of cultures, or just a word that's used in that regard. But apparently Arcadia is actually a city in California. So she sort of just picked a random place in California and decided to name it that. I don't know if she has a special connection to a memory there. My body is a map of LA. I stand straight like an angel with a halo, hanging out at the Hilton Hotel window. My chest, the Sierra Madre. She's talking about different locations in California. My hips, every high and byway that you trace with your fingertips, like a Toyota. Run your hands over me like a Land Rover. I absolutely love that metaphor. I think she's, you know, toying with American sort of tropes and ideals of masculinity, which is that cars are like a very masculine thing, and men love cars and they love to drive them places. And so she's saying, I want you to drive your car all over my body. I think it's very sexual, and very interesting lyric. In Arcadia, all roads that lead to you as integral to me as arteries. In the music video, she shows different highways projected on her with, you know, the cars, like sort of the capillaries, the blood vessels, the blood that flows straight to the heart of me. America. I can't sleep at home tonight. Send me a Hilton hotel or a cross on the hill. I'm a lost little girl finding my way to you. This is a classic love-stricken ballad from her. There's slight horn, jazzy instrumentation supporting it, a little bit more symphonic, a little bit more support for her instrumentally on this, though it is still fundamentally a, you know, dirge-like piano ballad. That's something that, you know, the chords are so weighted and yet so light. They're just very similar in sort of key to the minor atmosphere of so much of this record. Arcadia must be some sort of place that she just really loves to go when she's broken, and she finds that Hilton Hotel, and it's like the heart of, you know, her little Southern California world that she comes back to. And so she figuratively talks about it as this man that she falls in love with and comes back to periodically. I think it's just a really interesting, again, very Lana Del Rey trope of turning something into some sort of figurative metaphor for something that she's like worshiping. If it's a man, or it's a idea, or it's a place. A lot of these times California is that place. So then we have the trio, in the interlude, the trio. I found out that this is actually Ennio Morricone, the late Italian composer, melody, which is called the trio. But she decides to backbone it with some hip hop beats, which, you know, it's an interesting choice. I'm going to be honest with you. I think it is a little bit too at odds with the very minimalistic, piano-driven balladry of the rest of this project. There is nothing else on this project that gives any sort of bass like that little interlude does, which is okay. I don't necessarily think she can't have some real sticking out like a sore thumb sonic moment on the record, but in the cohesion of it, it does have me question, okay, so we're getting all sexy and we're having some fun, and then we go straight into the, you know, very slow tempo, laid back balladry that we're accustomed to for her. It's an interesting choice, but it's one that I expect Lana to make because she's not always going to be predictable, and it's a very artistic, bold move of her to make. A lot of people love this interlude and would love to see more of it, to see more of that sort of style of music from her. And I wouldn't be surprised if she wants to foray into that jazzier, dark hip hop sort of underbelly kind of side of music. But it's also very at odds with where so much of her sonic evolution is going. So it's a very interesting influence that she introduces. So Black Bathing Suit, I've got to be honest with you, if there's one song that I hella appreciate the lyrical content for, but I just absolutely cannot get behind the melodic construction of, it is Black Bathing Suit. I might really upset a lot of Lana Del Rey fans by saying this, but if I had to pick a least favorite song on this record, barring the interlude, it might be this song. There's one other song that maybe I might put below it, just possibly. But this is definitely not a highlight for me sonically. It's not that there isn't a strong melody there. I just don't know what it is, but it doesn't stand out to me. It's just a little too middling. There are songs on this record that swallow this one up in terms of the sonic elements for me. But that does not mean that I can't just gloss over it and not talk about the lyrical content. This song was originally titled, "If This Is the End, I Want a Boyfriend." Singing about how the only thing that really fits her these days is the black bathing suit. I suppose that quarantine has given her, she's indulged a little bit, as we all have, on a little too much pasta, and so things are not fitting as they once did. You don't know me any better than they do. My time is run over, so the only time you'll ever see me is in your dreams, in my black bathing suit. In verse 2, Swisher Sweet magazines promise you it's not. 'Cause of you that I mean, it's my afterthoughts. And what I never said, why there's a price on my head. Is she talking about the media? It's nothing to do with them, it's my karmic lineage. So I'm not friends with my mother, but I still love my dad. Untraditional lover, can you handle that? Any lover who's coming into her life right now has to deal with the complicated situation that she is in her personal life and in her professional life in a certain respect as well. The scrutiny that brings. On track number 6, If You Lie Down With Me, apparently this was meant for Ultraviolence. This was a song written long, long ago about an ex-boyfriend she had named Barry James O'Neill. Another one with a bit of a middling melody. I'm seeing a lot of people not find this song to really be a favorite of theirs. If there was one song that no one's really saying, I love this song, it's this one. No one's claiming it. And I do think it gives a bit of that Ultraviolence kind of hushed, middling, kind of mid-tempo balladry energy that Ultraviolence had a lot of. Very breathy. But the outro with the Americana jazzy horn section is really groovy and fun. And so I really appreciate that. It's what elevates the song for me. If it didn't have that, I would probably completely forget about it and skip it. So that was a smart choice. And it fits moreover with the ambiance of because it doesn't have a hip-hop beat. It doesn't have a contemporary twist. It's purely vintage, old school. Beautiful. I feel like she's made this song a million times. It's a very melancholic, very simple melody that at first I thought, this is nice. But then I realized, is nice enough? Is this something I'm really going to come back to? I think that the twinkling, effervescent piano work, which is so unique for her, I feel like she usually likes her piano chords to be very static. These are much more loose and flowing and light. And I really appreciate that. But other than that, there's not a whole lot coming back to me sonically that I feel is very strong. But it's still a very beautiful melody. It's just something we've heard stronger versions of from her before. However, what she's singing about lyrically, I don't think could speak to me any more than any of the other songs on this record. I am extremely in love with the way she talks about sadness as something that can actually be a vehicle for something truly beautiful. We always try and pressure everyone to be happy all the time. What if someone had asked Picasso not to be sad, she sings, never known who he was or the man he'd become? There would be no blue period. Let me run with the wolves. Let me do what I do. Let me show you how sadness can turn into happiness. I can turn blue into something. She sure references blue a lot on this record. And blue is a beautiful, beautiful, sad color. So it invokes the ambiance she's going for beautifully. And I believe her. I believe that, Lana, through her pain, through her suffering, can create amazing poetry. And that's something that great artists understand. And so that's why we're always going to run up against the grain sometimes with people who are so programmed to always be positive that we will come across as very broken and sort of stuck in our ways. But let us organically process through the pain the way we need to. We need to heal the way we need to heal, and it's not the way that you would traditionally heal. Let us have our blue dark nights. Let us have those moments of inspiration that we can give us the trust that we can actually make something that blow you away. On Violets for Roses, another song that this very old school kind of elegant melody comes out that I actually find very alluring. Something I keep kind of thinking of in my head. The melody has that staying power for me. You made me trade my violets for roses. You tried to take all the pink off my toes. And God knows the only mistake that a man can make is trying to make a woman change and trade her violets for roses. A lot of people suspect, and I think this is an excellent theory, that this isn't just a metaphor for a violet sort of symbolizing a sadder, a little bit more down to earth, kind of slightly broken person, compared to the rose, which is considered to be the archetype of beauty in the floral world, which is divine and perfect and fully in love and fully blooming. I think that it goes also to potentially a metaphor for Republican versus Democrat. He tried to turn her into a Republican, tried to take her violet away, which violets are blue or purple, and they're, signifying the blue of the Democrat. And I think that that's a very interesting way of interpreting these lyrics. I don't know if we'll ever know the full story or what she really means by that, but I think that people are really on the money there. Okay, so Dealer. I really, really enjoy this track. I think a lot of people are really finding an affinity for this. Miles Kane is a musician who is a part of this defunct band called The Last Shadow Puppets that she and one other band member, a bandmate from another band called the Arctic Monkeys, got together in 2017 and made an album that never saw the light of day, although the song California from Norman came from that project. And a couple songs went on their other projects. But Miles is the vocalist. Please don't try to find me through my dealer. He won't pick up his phone. Don't find me through my father either. He ain't been home for years, before Lana jumps in. And very much in a sort of heart-stricken, down on her luck, dive bar sort of expressive, screaming vocal, Lana sings, I don't want to live. I don't want to give you nothing because you never give me nothing back. Why can't you be good for something? Not even one shirt off of your back. And they just play off of each other. These pleas to someone, these pleas to say look, I'm done with you and you're not going to find me through any of these other ways in which you used to find me, ways that you used to, come into my life and infiltrate the way, kind of like a virus, just stay out. You're good for nothing. And so it's a studio jam session that just really worked. All the pieces played together wonderfully. It's a little jazzy and just pays off brilliantly. So this is a total vibe song, not usually the kind of music I'd be interested in, but I'm totally here for it with Lana. I'm going to go for the ride with her. And I think that the vocal breakdown she does in that wailing chorus is so beautiful in such a broken way. It's brilliant. And Miles Kane also, he's not hard on the eyes. I've seen a few pictures. Okay? We need more songs like this. But then we go into Thunder. On the opening verse, I was like, yes, we're getting a cinematic 13 Beaches-esque melody here. I'm seeing it, the old Hollywood sweeping blue jeans. And then it falls flat for me in the chorus, and I get really frustrated with the melodic construction of this song for that reason. This is apparently another old song that fans know from a different version from years ago that I'd never heard, so I'm going into all of this blind. But this song doesn't do it for me sonically. I'm sorry. It's another one that I would rank pretty low in that department, which I know is controversial. And it also doesn't exactly have the most interesting lyrical content. Let's be real, it's one of the more generic ones on the record. Wildflower, Wildfire. Boy, that's a mouthful to say. Very interesting title. Here's the deal, because I know you want to talk about it. And I love how she sing-talks that line. Okay, fine. I promise you a million tomorrows. What I can promise is I'll lie down like a bed of wildflowers, and I'll always make the sheets smell like gardenias wild at your feet, and I nourish you hazily. Baby, I've been running on stardust, alone for so long, I wouldn't know what hot fire was. Hot fire, hot weather, hot coffee. I'm better with you. It's strange, but it's true, darling. Not to turn into a wildfire, to light up your night, with only my smile and nothing that burns. Baby, I'll be like a wildflower. I live on sheer willpower. I'll do my best never to turn into something that burns. Very simple, kind of, again, dirge-like piano chords here, like a processional. And she just sort of lets the song just sort of take off on its own time. You're not really going to expect the expected here. And I think that, the tempo change ups in the song and the breathy versus elegant, stretched higher vocals, the way this song is a million different songs in one, just like Textbook, I appreciate. Now, is it a song that I necessarily cling to melodically? No. But it's something that in the context of the album, I'll never skip. Basically sitting down and telling him, here's why you should fall in love with me. Nectar of the Gods, a lamentative, reflective guitar ballad. One of the few songs that doesn't have any piano. I want so much more from the melody of this song. I really don't know if this stands on its own 2 feet well enough. Again, we start out promising, but then we never really deliver the ultimate package in that the melody doesn't get off of its own 2 feet and really soar for any moment. It stays at that sort of same, almost half asleep kind of ruminating, blah, 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 blah. And this is where I think a lot of people who are critics of her would probably tune out and say this record is starting to go a little too, like, same sounding. It's getting a little bit sleepy. I'll be honest, the first time I heard this record, I was getting a little sleepy. Like, I don't know what it is, but I mean, she has a way of delivering vocals that makes it sound like she's not even fully awake half the time she's giving it, which adds its own interesting flair. I'm not critiquing her for that as saying it sounds bad. I think it's a certain mood and ambiance, but it's not for everyone. And I think that, unfortunately, when you have so many songs like that, it really does start to weigh the album down. And so by this point, I am starting to lose interest. I hate to say that. Living Legend doesn't help. So if there was one other song, like I said, next to Black Bathing Suit, that melodically is a skip for me, it's Living Legend. Now, the moment where she goes, wow, 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 she also does that on another song, but not quite as computerized. She's trying to sound like an electronic guitar, and it is very fun to listen to. I've got to give her credit. It's the highlight of the song for sure. Living Legend is another Ultraviolet's B-side from years ago that I get why she wanted to finally put out, but it feels like we've moved on from songs like that. I can sense that in comparisons to songs like Blue Banisters or Arcadia or even Black Bathing Suit, we've evolved so much in our songwriting. And Living Legend to me kind of speaks of the kind of older songwriting of style of Lana that is very romantic, but in some ways very archetypal. And it's not exactly a snapshot of her own life in the way that it could have been. Though there's definitely interesting name drops, like the Brooklyn Bayou. I wonder what that is. Makes me think it's some sort of nightclub, but I have no idea. I'm not a hipster, like she seems to really want to be on this record or be with. Not that kind of hipster. Cherry Blossom, another song from a long time ago. What you don't tell no one, you can tell me. Little ghost, tall, tan like milk and honey. You're very brave and very free. This is the warmest Lana sounds on this record. I mean, she's really just opening it up with open arms. I push you high, cherry blossom on your sycamore tree. Cherry blossoms don't grow on sycamore trees, but hey, we'll go with it. What you don't tell no one, you can tell me. Swing it high like Jesus, wild and free. Dandelions in your hair, you're very brave, and there's much to see. It has a lullaby feel to it, and something you would sing to a child. And so I often do wonder if this is a song potentially to give to her potential child, unborn child she might have one day, who I thought was going to call Clementine because she references that on a Chemtrails song. But now apparently it's Angelina. So we're not entirely sure what she would name her baby, but probably one of those two names. And this song is probably dedicated to her. The final track, Sweet Carolina. Boy, does this song really get me going. This song really gets me emotional. Sweet Carolina is everything I wanted from a whimsical, very feminine, motherly ballad from her. The piano work is sparkling. It's childlike. It's so whimsical and so different from, like I said, the very dun, 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 piano work that we get in the simple chords that she does in all these melodies, and just makes this song stand out from the record like nothing else. This was written as a love song for her sister Chuck, who I think real name is Caroline. Who I think her real name is Caroline, because Chuck is, I would think that's a boy's name. That's her sort of nickname. And Caroline is having a baby. I don't know if she's already had it by now, but in the time of this being written, she's writing this. She sings, "If you ever get the baby blues, I'm here for you." So she's singing about, fears of having postpartum depression. She's basically telling her sister that through all the ups and highs and lows of having a baby, this song and me and all of us, we're here for you, closer than your next breath, which is very close. I have to give a shout out to verse 2. I think verse 2 is going to go down in Lana Del Rey Wikipedia legend. You name your baby Lilac Heaven after your iPhone 11. Crypto forever, screams your stupid boyfriend. Fuck you, Kevin. Now, is she really naming her baby Lilac Heaven? Because, that's a real call out. It's like, I love you and your boyfriend. Oh, but hold on. I actually hate your boyfriend, and I think that name is really stupid. I don't know if this is all tongue-in-cheek, if it's sort of like an inside joke between them as sisters. I think that's probably the case. Either way, the way she sings it and delivers such a gut-punching, hilarious line is so Lana Del Rey, and I absolutely love it. Her poetry is on point. There's very something classic about this song, very old school, vintage, 1920s, 1930s. She, always brings it back to that feeling of being closer to great American standards of the past. And I think that that's where Lana really shines melodically. And so I really wish that there were some more songs that melodically kind of took us a bit more in that direction, just to kind of envelop us in that vibe. Instead, what we get is an album that's predominantly about lyric, that's predominantly about ambiance. The piano, the synth work, all of that is just stuff you throw on later. Jack Antonoff is not on this project, and I usually rant about how I'm not a big Jack Antonoff fan, but I'm going to be honest with you, I sort of miss his touch on some of these songs. I also miss Rick Knowles. I really do miss him. I know he's on a few songs here and there, but he's not. A lot of the producing is done by Lana herself. Also Drew Erickson, a couple others that she's worked with before. But I do miss the Rick Knowles production that he had, that comes with a lot of her earlier records. But I do think that this album maybe could have benefited from a little bit more time in the oven in terms of considering how it sounds sonically with the instrumentation. But with all that being said, I know that Lana's not really super interested in creating an album like that, which is something as a fan I just have to understand and accept. I really, really wonder where she's going from here, because after this project, I think we have had Lana's put out the most Lana album she could possibly put out. And I think we need a break. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I just really need a break, because at this point, I feel like she's trying to break me and trying to make me bored of her music. And I don't want to be bored of her music. I don't want to let that happen, but I'm getting very bored. Everything she's putting out, the songs, the melodies, it just sounds all the same to me now. And it really pains me to say this. I know that this album is getting pretty decent scores. Some people are saying it's her best yet. Mostly Twitter stans, but there are a lot of favorable reviews by big publications. I do not think that this is anywhere close to Norman. I am sorry, I just have to break it to you, but this is far from her worst record just at the same time. It's really hard to rank her albums because it is so subjective, but for me personally, this is definitely not an album I would put in the top categories of her records, just because you know how much of a Honeymoon fan I am. You know how much I love Norman. There was something about you know, there's something about this record that is definitely going to take a lot of time to sit and digest. But it leaves me wanting more, but at the same time, not wanting anything else afterwards. I think the fans of her who have stuck with her from the beginning will really appreciate the fact that she's diving back into her catalog and giving us fully mastered versions of songs from 8 years ago. I think the fans really will love this. But as someone who sort of watches Lana Del Rey and is very intrigued by her artistry, but sort of also has much more sort of interested in, I don't want to say pop music, but when it comes to alternative, let's just say it's very hit or miss for me. I'm a little bit worried that Lana's veering a little too much into the possible lane of a melodic, discordant, kind of a no time signature, kind of sandbox freedom, which has its moments where it really works. It's the Jackson Pollock method, but a lot of the time I miss like something that's a little bit more polished and fully crafted to be epic. And I just don't know if this album has enough of that for me. So overall, I'm left with a bit of a feeling about some of it. The highlight songs for me, definitely Blue Banisters. I think my favorite song off the entire record might be Sweet Carolina, which I know is controversial. I know a lot of people are like, oh, that song's cute, but it's not anything near their other songs. I'm like, no, you don't understand. I want to live inside this song. Like, it's so beautiful. Her vocals are so bird-like. The production is so interesting. I really, really appreciate what she was doing with it. I also, Arcadia, I have to give a shout out to. I'm really loving Textbook. Melodically, it's really growing on me. It's very epic. I would also say Violets for Roses is a melodic standout. And then Dealer. How can I forget Dealer? Maybe that's my favorite song on the record, just because it's so memorable and so interesting. And it's really a step. I don't know if the rest of this record is really a step anywhere in a certain direction. It's just Lana not playing it safe. Don't get me wrong, but it's just Lana being Lana, and, take it or leave it. I'm not here to judge, it's a subjective opinion. I'm sorry if you think that I'm being harsh on it. I don't know. I'm not as interested as I once was. Maybe that's the case, but her poetry is definitely strong, and her vocals are, as crisp and polished as ever in the way that they're meant to be. It's all very deliberate, and I will never fault her for that. She's the most deliberate artist I can imagine in terms of making everything sound exactly the way it should for her vision. And that's at the end of the day what this is. This project is her just letting herself shine in a way that she knows might not necessarily please everyone, but that's never really been her MO anyway, has it? So why not run with it? So those are my thoughts on the record. I feel like I'm not doing it justice. There's so much I could say. I'm probably thinking in the editing, oh, I should have added this in. But as of now, I've talked for long enough. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on this project. You can tell me about how I'm wrong about so many of the melodies, because I know that my critique of melody, it's really kind of hard to stand behind, because it's just I just don't like it. And it's some people will be like, but there is a melody. And I'm like, yes, but it's just not the melody, So it's a very kind of hard to explain subjective thing for me, but the melodies just aren't really it for a lot of these songs for me. But only about half, which it's a big album. So that means there's still a lot of songs I love that I'll be listening to for a long time. It's a vibe. I'm still always going to support Lana and her artistry. That's not going to change. I hope you enjoyed this review, and please don't crucify me if you found it a little controversial. And I will see you all in my next one. My review of Chemtrails will be in the description, along with my review of every other Lana Del Rey project, because I've reviewed them all. Thank you all so much for watching. Have a wonderful, blessed day. Peace, love, and light. Bye.